the reasons, and unfortunately, I'm going to be flying solo tonight without my co-host, the lovely Arena Duhard. But the show must go on. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the language of online dating because the language of online dating um, is what inspired me to write the book to begin with. Because what I found was that going back into online dating or dating in general, what I found was I was clueless to some of the things that, some of the terms that I would see online. And I'm not afraid to say that I'm going to call myself a little bit old school in the sense that there were things that I just didn't understand or didn't understand those terms. And so I had to like research them. And when I was talking to some of my friends who also were online dating, what I found was that they were clueless too. They was just as clueless as I was when it comes to some of these terms and things like that. And they weren't finding success with online dating. So I said to myself, you know what? Let me write a book, right? The Good, the Bad, and the Odd online dating book to really kind of just decipher some of the things that I saw online that now of course there were some things that are pretty obvious now, right? Like I'll give you an example. Um LTR, right? You'll see a lot of times women put in their profiles, LTR. They're looking for a long-term relationship, right? Obvious, right? And I think in a lot of cases, I'm going to say, and this is not, don't quote me. This is not an actual fact. This is just an opinion. I think more women are looking for long-term relationships than not, right? So I don't know if guys. I know for me, I am looking for a long-term relationship, but I don't know if all guys are looking necessarily for long-term relationships. I guess it would depend on who you meet because it's just like Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson used to say, everybody has a plan until they're hit, right? And so I would be like, and it's the same thing with online dating. I think a lot of times you might have in your mind what you're looking to accomplish or who you want to be with or what you're looking for. And then when you go online and you meet someone, you're like, oh, okay. Especially if the person kind of checks off all the boxes, then you're starting to rethink, do I want just a long-term relationship or do I want marriage and stuff like that? So when someone kind of checks off the boxes, you sometimes tend to reevaluate. So one of the things, so I'm just going to go over some of the terms that I saw online. And I'm sure some people know some of the terms, and I'm sure there's some that don't know all the terms that you see on like online and on dating profiles and things like that, right? So we all know about the LTR, long term relationship, right? And these are just things that I'm going over in the book that I wrote down. So ONS, right? One night stand, right? You might see stuff like that. And they have websites specifically for folks that are looking for like one night stands and things like that. So if you're not looking for a one night stand, you'll see ONS and you'll be like, what the hell is that? Right? And then, of course, FWB, right? Friends with benefits. And women often say, they want a guy to be honest and I'm sure, listen, I'm sure there are women out there that want a friend without benefits. Because that actually, when I was on Tinder, and you might see I have profiles on various websites or apps, dating apps, because I was trying to see which one is the best one, right? And so I have a Tinder account, right? And on Tinder, people are a little bit more forthright with what they want. So this woman reached out to me one time and she was like, and women are honest. The one thing I must say about it with online dating, and I must have give kudos to the ladies because women are honest when it comes to being in relationships, to being married. Like I could just tell you. Obviously, I don't see men's profiles. Um, Unless I'm gonna go on the assumption the guy doesn't put on there that he's married, unless he's looking for like a polyamorous relationship. But women, I mean, I could just tell you, I've seen plenty of profiles where the women will say stuff like married, looking for a friend, or married, looking to hang out. They'll say stuff like that, right? And so they're very honest about it. So, anyway, a woman had reached out to me, right, on Tinder, and, she was just kind of looking for a friend. She was married and she was like, her and her husband were going through some issues. And so, she wanted someone to hang out with. And so I'm thinking, you know what? Um, Maybe that would be an ideal situation because, sometimes relationships a lot of times bring drama, right? And so, for guys, I think, we try to avoid drama, right? And so, because we try to avoid drama, sometimes, because listen, and no disrespect to women, when I say this, women can be emotional creatures, right? And I always jokingly say, women are emotionally attached to their vaginas, right? Where guys, and I don't think guys are emotionally attached to their penises, right? So once you're intimate with someone, right, a lot of times the relationship goes to another level, right? And so sometimes you don't want the drama. So a woman who's married, who's just looking for a friend, I don't think she's looking for any drama, anything like that, right? Now, the crazy part about it is a woman, even though she might be married and she said decides, you know what, I want to just hang out and you know deal with someone, even though she's married, she runs the risk of getting emotionally attached to that guy, right? Because once again, a lot of women are emotionally attached to their vaginas. So once you're intimate with someone, especially if he's good, right? If the guy is good, you're probably going to get a little bit attached, especially if he's better than your husband, right? If the guy is better than your husband, right, you're going to be going back to your husband talking about, I mean, you're not going to, let's say you keep it on the low. You're going to be going back to your husband thinking, man, like I'm dealing with this other dude. He's fantastic. And the husband, he's not as good, right? So now you get more emotionally attached, right? So some other terms that I saw, and these are all in the book, right? Ghosting, that means disappearing, right, on a person. Now, I don't think I've ever ghosted anyone, right? Because my number essentially has never changed. Now, you can sometimes lose interest in women, right? Because I'm just going to listen, I'm going to be honest with folks because that's how I roll. Every woman thinks she's interesting. Every single woman thinks she's interesting. I could just assure you that if you ask the woman, are you interesting? They say, of course, they're interesting, right? But there are some women that are not interesting. I'm sorry. And so when you see women put in their profiles, they want consistency, right? And you see that often. Sometimes the reason why guys um, fail to be consistent is because the woman can no longer keep his attention, right? Because the conversation is just ho hum average, right? So if you want consistency, you've got to keep the guy interested. You've got to keep him motivated, right? So for instance, I remember one time I was talking to this woman, and I must admit she was very interesting. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because she lived kind of far away, And so long distance relationships are very challenging, right? But anyway, one of the things that we did, which was pretty interesting, was we would watch a movie at the same time. So even though we're not in the same state, right? But she would call me and say, "Hey, what you watching?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to watch such and such." And she would flip to the channel and we would watch it together. And I thought that was interesting, right? And another thing that sometimes we did um, is we would play music for each other, right? We would be on FaceTime, and she would ask me, what's your favorite song? And then I would play it, and then she would say, "This is my favorite song," and she would play it, and she we would just kind of play that game, and it was very interesting. I must admit, very entertaining, very engaging, and it kept you interested. I think sometimes when you start talking to someone and once again the conversation is lacking, right? That's where you have to with the book, develop conversation, right? So you sometimes have to create scenarios, right? You've got to talk about um, business ideas and things that they want to accomplish. Really kind of get into the nitty gritty and find out about the person, because if if the woman is, and listen, no disrespect to some women out there, but if you're not interesting, right? You don't have any goals. You don't have anything to. You're not looking to accomplish anything. You don't read anything. Like, one of the best ways to have a good conversation is ask someone, "What's the last book you read? Tell me about it." Right? And when the person tells you about the last book they read, right, it's a really engaging conversation, because most people are going to read a book that they liked. So if you read a book you liked, and this is from, guys, ask the woman, tell me about the book. What happened in the book? Who was the main character? Things like that. And you'll see the woman, it really shows you a lot, right? Let me tell you what it shows you. One, it shows you how the person is able to describe things, right? It also kind of shows you what excites them, right? Because most people are going to read a book that are interesting to them. I mean, occasionally we might read a book that someone gave us and we might read it, but generally, if we picked a book, it's something that's really interesting. Like, one of the things that I find interesting is the subconscious mind, right? So if someone asks me, what's the last book I read a book that talked about the subconscious mind. It talked about decision making, right? And how people come up with decisions and how they come about it and things like that. That's a great way to have a really good conversation, an insightful, intelligent conversation with someone. And trust me, that conversation can go on and on if it's, about something that you really enjoy, right? So, good evening, everybody. Right. So another thing, breadcrumbing. Right. So breadcrumbing is the definition of it is a giving false hope, right, to someone. Right. So the thing about breadcrumbing, I think that it's not necessarily breadcrumbing, but sometimes you just kind of want to take a break, right? A day or two, a break from someone. And I think what happens with online dating, and I know for me, if I don't talk to someone every single day, I'm kind of fine with that. If we go, if I talk to you on Monday, we had a lengthy conversation. Let's say Tuesday, I didn't talk to you. I talked to you on Wednesday. Talk to you on Thursday. I don't talk to you on Friday. I talk to you on Saturday. I'm fine with that. Although I think women need that consistency. Like, women, I think, need to talk to the guy every single day. Um, and so, guys have to understand that, right? Because I know, just in talking to a couple of guys that went online, they found that the women that they were talking to got angry with them because they failed to talk to them one day, right? And listen, things happen during the course of a day. Listen, you may be tired. So this is my chance to tell women, don't blow it out of proportion if you don't talk to a guy one day. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that the person has lost interest in you. It doesn't mean that the person is, out there with another woman. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It might mean that he just needs to be in his own space, right? Because there's women out there, you don't talk to them for one day, forget about it. They have a heart attack. And so, I'm here to tell you it's okay, right? And in fact, I probably shouldn't even say this, all right? But I'm going to say, because I'm going to help the sisters out. Give yourself some space sometimes. Like, you don't have to necessarily talk to the person every day. If the person is interested in you, he's going to contact you, right? He's going to reach out to you, and let him. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying let him do all the work. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, you know what? Give him some space sometimes. Like if you spoke to him Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, don't reach out to him. Wait for him to reach out to you, right? And listen, if he doesn't reach out to you, don't look at it as a negative. You know. Now, if you don't reach out to him, if you talk Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you don't reach out to him on Thursday, and he doesn't reach out to you on Thursday, and then he doesn't reach out to you on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, now he's probably, I'm going to say, lost a little bit of interest. And, some women is going to reach out to the person and see, like, hey, what's going on? I haven't spoken to you. Um, and that's fine, right? Because women, I think, oftentimes want to know where they stand, right? And sometimes I think they want to know where they stand too early in a relationship. Um, I kind of think, and for those listening, you tell me if I'm wrong, right? I think after 30 days, and this has happened to me on a couple of occasions where after 30 days, the woman is like, yo, where do we stand? What's going on? I kind of think 30 days is not nearly enough time to determine where the relationship is going, me personally. But I feel like women think that, and I don't know who said this. And if you know who said this particular quote that I'm getting ready to say to you, please let me know, right? Someone has told women that guys know within the first day if they want to be with someone, right? I heard a woman tell me that her father told her a guy knows right away if this is the woman he's going to marry. I don't know where like that came up. That is so false. I could just tell you from being a guy and talking to a lot of guys, and a lot of my friends are married. I could just tell you they did not know the woman that they were dating in the first week was the woman they were going to marry. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are instances where you meet someone, um, like there was you know what, and I'll even tell you, I used to work for Paragon Sports in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, and one of the managers there, he was going on vacation. I won't say his name. I don't know. He probably don't work there no more because it's so long ago. But and he went on vacation. He came back on vacation. He was gone for a week. He met this woman on vacation, um, and he married her after 2 weeks. He got back from vacation after talking to this woman for a week. Was talking to her for 2 more weeks, and then 2 weeks later he got married. He was like, "Yo, I married her." I was like, "What?" After like essentially 2 weeks talking because on vacation you just met the person and stuff like that, and he met her and he got married to her like like 2 weeks after he got back from vacation, they started talking. I guess they spent a lot of time together, and he was like, "She's the one." I could just tell you, I don't think that's normal to fall head over heels in love with someone after 2 weeks. But it's not saying it's not possible. I'm sure it's happened. People have you met someone and oh my God, they're the one. You know what I mean? But I don't think that's happens often, right? So, some of the other things, catfishing, obviously people know there's a TV show called Catfishing. And that's when someone appears to be one person when they're really not. And I think to me, that's the worst. Catfishing is honestly the worst thing, right? And there's actually um, uh, a documentary about the guy who used to play for Michigan. I think it was Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. And he went on to play for the Chargers. Mateo, I think that's his name, Mateo, if I'm not mistaken. But if I'm wrong, you can, I'm sure, pull it up. But anyway, he was talking to this woman online. Come to find out, it ain't a woman, it's a guy, right? And then people were saying, "Well, oh, you were gay, this and that." And he was like, "No, I'm not gay. I just he thought it was a woman, and it wasn't. It was some dude who I don't know if he was pulling a prank or I don't even remember the documentary. It's been so long, but it was the craziest thing. Like, why? Why do something like that? I mean, I get. Listen, there are scammers out there, so the scammers they do it because listen, they're looking to scam you, so they're a little different, right? But I'm just talking about someone online trying to meet someone. Why put a picture of one person and be someone else? That makes no sense whatsoever. Because all it's going to do is, when you eventually meet the person, they're going to be disappointed, right? So, it's not going anywhere. So why do that? It just boggles the mind, right? Um, a term that always drives me nuts, and I thankfully, the more mature a woman is, probably doesn't use WYD, what you doing. I could just tell you that drives me nuts. Like when I see what you're doing, and I mean, I'm not gonna discount someone because they use that term, but uh, like this one woman used to say every morning, she used to text me, Grand Rising, right? And I'd be like, Grand Rising? Like, I don't want to hear Grand Rising. Just say good morning, right? Don't what you doing me to death. There's some women that will what you doing you to death. What am I doing? I'm handling my business, right? So, but anyway, another term that you'll see, let's see, and there's like a bunch of different terms, right? So there's zombieing. Someone reappears after ghosting you, right? And it's funny. There was a young lady that I had met online, and I think we had just one conversation, right? And sometimes when you have a person's phone number, if you go on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, those these algorithms allow you to see, like it'll get the person out, like you see the person, right? Even though you might not have spoken to them in forever, right? So anyway, there was this young lady online that I think I'd spoken to once maybe, and all of a sudden, excuse me, all of a sudden, she started popping up in my Instagram, and I recognized like, oh, okay, and we started talking, right? Well, no, let me say this. She started complimenting me on some of my posts on Instagram, and I was complimenting her on her posts on Instagram. And then she reaches out to me on Instagram. She's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Hi." And she's like, "Um, have we spoken before?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think we did speak once." And she was like, "Because I noticed that, you've been." um, giving me a thumbs up or complimenting my pictures, and I looked at your profile and I like your pictures, and trying to understand why we never connected or what have you, right? And so I was like, you know what? I don't know, because sometimes, sometimes you might have been talking to someone else. Sometimes life got busy. You got family responsibilities. Who knows, right? So anyway, we start talking, right? And we went out a few times, and really nice woman. But there's some women out there that they want to get married like yesterday, right? Like they should don't like. I'm gonna. I may even start a website that says married yesterday. Instead of married at first sight, and love is blind. If you ever see a website or an app that says married yesterday, you know it's mine, right? Because it really boggles the mind. There's some women that want to get married like yesterday. And I'm like, um, and I get it, right? Some women, and guys too, because I can't, there's some women that want to get married yesterday. Like you talk to them 2 weeks later, like, um, well, like when I see profiles, right? And this is why we talk about languages of online dating, right? When I see a woman's profile that says dating intentionally, I think we kind of know what that means. They are looking to get married yesterday, right? Like they let their intentions be known right away. Like I'm sorry, and they're gonna be some women saying, I ain't looking to get married like yesterday. Well, when you say you're dating intentionally, that means to me, like you're dating, but you want the person to know, like, yo, if this is not leading to marriage, I ain't interested, right? And to me, that's a lot of pressure on a guy to say you're dating intentionally because you can't predict how a relationship is going to go, right? You've got to kind of like rock with the relationship and kind of see. Now, I get that, sometimes women are trying to protect their hearts. And I totally understand that because once again, some women can be emotional. And so, yes, I'm all for you protecting your heart. Like if you don't want to get you know, too involved with a guy because you're not really certain where it's going to go, and you want to, tread lightly and what have you, by all means, it makes sense, right? But to me, when you put in a profile dating with intentionally, and listen, there are guys out there, like once again, like I said, they're looking to get married like yesterday. So because they're looking to get married yesterday, I guess, putting dating intentionally might make sense, right? Um, you know what? So let me correct that. It might make sense. If you want to put dating intentionally on your profile, by all means do so. Because listen, there are guys out there that are looking to get married like yesterday too. Although I must admit, when I hear a guy wants to get married right away, I'm skeptical. Like, because I don't understand, because rarely do guys want to get married like yesterday. So the guys that do want to get married like yesterday, I tend to think that they're hiding something. That's just my personal belief. Like, I think they're either looking to get married quickly because they have some set of medical issue. They're looking to get married quickly because they don't like to be alone. They're looking to get married quickly because some women say guys are looking for places to live. You know what I mean? Like, so I get it, but generally, I don't think most guys are looking to get married right away, right? Like, I think and I know some guys that have gotten married after 4 months, 6 months. I guess if you're getting a little older, maybe you are looking to get married a little sooner, maybe. But my thought is, listen, marriage is not something to be taken lightly, right? Like, be sure. Like, you can have no doubts in your mind this is the one. That's just my personal belief, right? And I get relationships or work and all that kind of stuff, and there's some compromise that needs to be done and all this other kind of stuff. But you can have no doubt in your mind, at least for me. Like, when if and when I get married again and I say I love you and I want to marry you and this and that, you can rest assured I have no doubt in my mind that this person is going to make me happy. And I'm certain I can make that person happy, but there's no doubt in my mind this person is going to make me happy and I'm going to be able to spend the rest of my life with that person. Right. So now, some of the other terms, um, um, like hiking, you see hiking in a person's profile indicates that they're adventurous and a risk taker, right? Um, Person who says they're worldly, right? A person that's worldly likes adventure, may like taking risks, likes to be exposed to certain things, right? Zombieing, someone who reappears after ghosting, right? So we mentioned that. Cushing, cushioning, keeping a backup matches while dating someone, right? So let me ask, because this is interesting, right? And for those folks, because there are two schools of thought when it comes to dating, right? So let me ask. And I'm going to tell you my opinion, and you tell me if I'm wrong, right? Now, with online dating, I don't believe um, you should put all your eggs in one basket right away, right? Because you're still getting to know folks, and so because you're still getting to know folks, it um, you know, if you put all your eggs in one basket, don't work out, then you kind of got to start again. Now, once you determine that the person is not a match, I kind of think it's best to move on because you don't want to mislead the person, right? So I definitely don't want to mislead a woman. Um, and when you're just in the, I'm going to say the dating phase, friendly phase, right? You can still have conversations with other women, right? Because what's going to happen is as you have conversations, eventually one woman is going to separate herself from other conversations that you're having. And like I said, the interesting conversations that you have, or the more interesting a conversation is with one woman, the more you want to talk to that woman, the more you want to spend time with her. So that has a tendency, but like I said, conversation has to be interesting. Um, I could just tell you, like there was this one woman I was talking to, and she was very attractive, right? But there's only two things she would want to talk about, right? She only wanted to talk about her kids. She had three daughters, right? Or she wanted to talk about her job, right? And there comes a point where talking about the job is not interesting, right? In fact, there's some people out there that don't even like talking about their jobs because their jobs are so taxing, right? If you work at a job where you're dealing with a lot of things all day every day, you might not want to talk about your job. You want to talk about other things, right? So this is where conversation comes in because if you can't talk about the person's job and after a while talking about their kids is not interesting, what else you got, right? What do you like to do? Where have what things do you hope to accomplish in the new year? What did you always want to learn? Like, um, right? Like, what new skill do you want to learn? Right? And why do you want to learn it? Right? Have you ever thought about your own business? What kind of business would it be if you were starting your own business? And why would you want to start that business? What are you hoping to accomplish? Like these are things that these are conversations that you got to have sometimes to find out what the person's about, to make the conversation interesting. If you're just talking about your kids, you just talk like one woman, attractive woman, but I'm just gonna tell you. We did a meet and greet, and she spoke about her granddaughter for a good 45 minutes, right? And I get it. I don't have grandkids. I'm sure when I have grandkids, I'm going to want to talk about them ad nauseum as well. But just for FYI, when you go to meet someone, you really should ask questions about them, right? And they should be asking questions about you, not you telling them about, you know, what your, granddaughter did today. And, she's calling me Gammy. And, she walked for the first time. And I spent an hour with her at the zoo yesterday. And her mother thinks that, she's going to be this. And like, uh, I get it. We love our grandkids, we love our kids, and all that kind of stuff. But when you're trying to get to know someone, you really want to kind of redirect and focus in on the person. Ask about them. Don't, belabor them with, your grandkids or your kids and stuff like that, because they're going to get to know your kids anyway, right? But you really want to try to get to know that person, right? Um, so, some more words. Orbiting and engaging directly, but liking, watching stories, posts, orbiting, right? That's an interesting one because I think with TikTok, orbiting happens a lot and often, right? Because you're watching folks. Now, I'm not a big getting into someone's DM person and all that kind of stuff because I mean, you see attractive women online, you see attractive women on Instagram, on Facebook, stuff like that. I could just tell you, me personally, I think it's, and I'm not saying that it hasn't worked for some guys, because you hear all the time guys say, or women say, he slid into my DM. Me personally, I think that's a complete waste of time in most instances, because I think women, when you slide into their DM, I kind of think sometimes guys appear to be desperate, right? You're so desperate, you got to slide into a woman's DM, right? I mean, I hate to sound like that, but there are guys out there that are just so, they come across as so desperate. Like, man, you sliding into the woman's DM. Now, if a woman wants to slide into a guy's DM, there's nothing wrong with that. Although a lot of women are not as forthright and they're not as aggressive. And so I tend to be skeptical if a woman slides into my DM, right? Because I think it's a scam. Maybe it's the New Yorker in me, because I'm from New York. And so we're always on guard about scams and things like that. So when someone slides into your DM, right, I'm automatically on guard, right? Like when a woman slides into my DM and she's like, "Hi, you're very handsome." And I'm like, "Thank you." Right? And then they're like, "Yeah, so are you seeing someone this and that?" Like women are very rarely very aggressive like that. So to me, I automatically think scam alert, right? Like, and it happened one time. I'll tell you a funny story. One time, this woman slides into my DM, right? And she says, "Good morning." So I said, "Good morning. How are you?" And she's like, "I'm good. How are you?" And so so we exchanged numbers. And so for about 2 weeks, she would text me, "Good morning," right? Grand rising, king, right? And all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm like, "Good morning," right? And we had a couple of conversations, right? And so I was thinking, okay, slid into my DM. I kind of see what she looks like, even though she was hesitant to do video chat, um, right? And so, okay, I'm like, all right, because some women claim they don't like video chatting. I'm a big proponent of video chatting. I want to see, make certain you say who you say you are. I want to see you, right? But It's only 2 weeks, so it's not that big of a deal, right? So let me tell you what she does, right? This is 2 weeks later, right? Like I said, every morning she's saying good morning, what have you, right? So finally, one morning, I say, "Good morning, how are you?" She says, "Oh, I'm not doing too well." So I said, "You're not doing too well? What's the matter?" She says, "Well, my grandmother needs an operation, and we're trying to collect money for her operation. And so I'm reaching out to all my friends, family and friends, and asking them if they can help out in any way. So we're looking for like donations, right?" And I said, "Oh my God." I said, "I'm so sorry to hear that." I said, "I totally understand." I said, "My grandfather needs an operation, and we're collecting money to see, so that he can get his operation. So I'm reaching out to folks to see if they can help out and give a donation, right?" And so that was the last time I spoke to her, right? Because once again, you know, scam alert, right? And I think maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I just think guys will fall for the okey doke more often. Well, maybe it's equal. I don't know. I can't speak for women, but I could just speak for guys. A lot of guys fall for the okey doke. Like one time, I was supposed to meet someone for. We were supposed to do a meet and greet, and right before I'm getting ready to leave my house, she texts me. She says, "I don't know if I'm going to be able to come." So I said, "Well, what's the problem?" And she says, "I don't have gas money." You don't have gas money? Well, to me, if you don't have gas money, then maybe you have bigger problems than dating, right? Because I'm sure she expected me to say, "Here, let me send you some gas money." No. If you don't have gas money, then in all likelihood, you're not capable of dating, right? And so a person shouldn't be hitting you up for gas money, right? And they shouldn't be hitting you up for donations for their grandma or their grandfather and all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, you need a guy that's going to be able to meet you halfway. And I mean, if he can't meet you kind of halfway, and I mean, I listen, I get it. Everybody goes through financial pitfalls from time to time. So, sometimes you need to take a break from dating. I know when I was buying my house, I took a break from dating. Why? Because my resources were being allocated for buying a house. And, a lot of times there's no romance without finance. So when you are trying to accomplish certain things, listen, sometimes you have to kind of put dating on the back burner. And I don't think like all women understand that sometimes. Sometimes when you're trying, and I respect the brothers who are trying to get their finances in order and stuff like that. I mean, listen, we all need companionship, but there's an expectation I think with women sometimes, wanting you to foot the bill and all that kind of stuff. And if your finances are not in order, sometimes you have to kind of take a back seat and say, "All right, let me get my finances in order before I start dating regularly." Right? And especially if you have like in my case, I have, two sons that I have to take care of. And so there's a part of me sometimes that says, maybe I should wait about dating until the boys are off on their own, right? But then there's a part that says, you know what, you need companionship as well, and you need to be with someone. So, you should explore these options out here and see, right? So, anyway, um, so we talked about zombieing is someone who disappears and they come back. So that's why I was mentioning the young lady that on Instagram who slid in my DM and and we went out a few times. Nice lady, but once again was looking to get married yesterday, And that's not me. And I would tell anyone, if your mission is to get married like yesterday, you looking to get married in a year, I am not the man for you. I am not looking to get married in a year. Right. And so I would have to tell anyone, like, you should pursue someone who's looking to get married. Like, and I'm not saying I wouldn't get married again, because I had a great marriage, 11 years. I loved every moment of it. But, I know I'm not going to get married without being absolutely certain, 100% sure this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, because marriage shouldn't be taken lightly. Marriage is something that you should really think long and hard about, because it's supposed to be forever, right? So I'm going to go on some more terms that I have in the book here. So remember I mentioned, WYD, think it just drives me nuts. What you doing? What am I doing? Taking care of my business. I mean, my skin, right? Obviously laugh out loud. We know LOL, right? DTF, right? You'll see DTF on Tinder, right? Which is and I was shocked, because there are women out there who are just down to fuck. Like they're just looking for a physical connection. They're not looking for no commitment and stuff like that, which is fine, right? To me, I would avoid someone who's down to fuck, because obviously, if she's down to fuck me, she's probably down to fuck some other dude as well. And there's too many things out there that could kill you. So, me personally, I would avoid any profile that said that. But trust me, there are guys out there that that's what they want to do. That's what they're looking to accomplish. So, if that's what they're looking to accomplish, then it's a perfect match. Because if the woman's looking to do that and the guy's looking to do that, then by all means, do your thing, right? So, BBW, big black women. I appreciate the women that come out and say that, big women. There are plenty of guys out there that like big women, right? Um, so there's no shame in being big. Hey, sis, go out there, do your thing, right? Um, Obviously, ASAP, as soon as possible. FYI, we know what that is. G2G, gotta go, right? And listen, when you're talking to someone online, um, you kind of want to let them know if you've got to leave, right? Because if you just stop a conversation abruptly, the woman, and I'm guessing the guy thinks this as well, but it almost kind of feels like the person is not interested, because you could be in the middle of a conversation and it just dies on the vine. The person disappeared. And instead of them telling you, listen, I got to go, I got something to do, I got to go shopping, I got to go pick up the kids, whatever, they don't reveal that. Excuse me, they don't reveal that. And you're thinking, what did I say? What did I do? And they just disappeared on you. So, I would suggest, if you're online, use that term. Listen, I got to go. Let's continue this tomorrow, just so that the person knows that you weren't interested. It was just that you had to end the conversation because you had other things to do, right? My daughter loves to use this TTLY, talk to you later, right? That's another term. Let them know, listen, I will catch up with you later. It was nice talking to you. One of them that I haven't seen, but apparently this is something that people put on there. IMO, in my opinion, which, listen, you're going to have spirited debates with people online. So you need to know some of these abbreviations, because, and I'm one of the oddballs that like to spell everything out, probably because I'm a writer, and there are women out there who like to spell everything out. But, younger women, I think, use a lot of these slang and these abbreviations and stuff like that. And you got to know what the hell they're saying, right? So, that's why this is good to have. BTW, by the way. You know, you've got to kind of know when they say BTW, like, oh, okay, by the way, all right, or dope, you know, cool or awesome. I mean, we used to use dope in the old days, which was, meant cool or awesome, but now that's a slang, right? So you got to know what dope means. Um, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, right? If you're having a conversation about Michael Jordan and LeBron, you're going to get that conversation where they're going to be like, who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT? Right? Who's the greatest of all time? Right? And like, who's the greatest of all time president? Who's the greatest of all time, artist? Who's the greatest all time singer? So you got to know who the GOAT is or what they mean when they say that. Gucci, right? And there's this guy I used to work with on my night job, and every other word that came out of his mouth was Gucci. I'm Gucci. Okay. And you're like, we know Gucci as a term, for clothing, but he used to use it all the time. He's like, is there any other questions? I'm Gucci. Okay, you're Gucci. So when someone says they're Gucci, you should know they mean they're good to go. Like they're cool. Everything is good, right? Lit, right? Now that's a term that's I think is relatively new also, because lit means usually that the person is uh, a little intoxicated, usually, right? Or so they're like, I'm lit, like they're high or something like that. So you've got to know some of these terms. You got to know what people are saying when you hear them and you see them texting these things, right? OMG, oh my God, of course. It's a reaction sometimes. Someone says, "Oh, someone passed away." Oh my God, OMG, right? Salty, right? Yo, I'm a little salty. Yeah, salty. Yo, they might have like a little attitude, right? Um, so you got to know what these folks mean sometimes. Um, Snatched looks good, perfect, fashionable. Now I'd never even heard of that one. Snatched, right? Like I guess the person got it snatched it off the rack, right? It's hot. Okay, cool. So if anyone ever uses snatched, I at least know what they mean, right? Of course, fire, right? Hot, trendy. That's fire, right? You're like, okay. Apparently they like, your outfit, that tie is fire. Those shoes, those sneakers. I hear young kids at like my son's school. Those sneakers are fire, right? They're hot, right? They're nice. So you've got to know these terms. Um, TBH, to be honest, right? And let's keep it. Is everybody gonna be honest all the time? Probably not. But they're gonna use to be honest, which is fine, right? The tea, you hear that on shows now. Spill the tea. Let the person know about gossip and stuff like that. They want to spill the tea, right? What's the tea? Spill the tea. Okay. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of gossip per se, but nevertheless, people do it, right? Thirsty. I love that. You thirsty, right? Um, Trying to get attention, like on TikTok. It's funny because, and I get it. TikTok is such a thing now where the more you go on TikTok, the more options TikTok gives you. And the more followers you have, the more people that are watching you, and the more you post, TikTok will start paying you, right? But there's some people on TikTok that look thirsty. They like, and I don't think they're doing it for the money. I don't think that they're doing it solely for the attention, right? Like there's this one woman, I mean, she must have like she has the most time on the planet Earth. Like I don't care how many, like, because I go on TikTok sometimes because I get sometimes notifications, so I'll go on TikTok and I don't go live that often. I go live, if obviously because of the show, and I might go live because I have my action figures that I sell online, so I might be trying to sell some action figures or something like that, right? But generally, you're not going to see too much of me online unless I have a specific purpose, right? But there's some folks that are online that they have no purpose but to get attention. They are thirsty, right? Which is fine, I guess. Someone is enjoying it. So, hey, who am I to say? If you want to be thirsty, by all means, be thirsty for the attention, right? Um, YOLO, you only live once. So, yeah, listen, you only live once. So, by all means, live like it's your last day, right? Because you're not promised tomorrow. There was a friend of mine who passed away last year from brain cancer, and a year prior, we was just talking about. He was just talking about buying a house because I used to be a real estate agent. He would call to me, and he wanted some information about some real estate and what areas would be a good place to find some reasonable real estate and stuff like that. We're talking a year later, he's gone, right? So he never got that chance to buy the house. He'll never get a chance to accomplish some of the things that he wanted to accomplish. So listen, make it count. You know what I mean? Like live it like if you want to go on vacation, right? I have a friend of mine who works all the time, right? And I don't like I always tell him, yo, you need to take a vacation. He's like, oh, I gotta work, this and that. I'm like, yo, you're not promised tomorrow, right? Like I'm a big advocate of sickcation. I ain't nothing wrong with taking a sickcation, right? Take a day. Like, some people laugh because every now and then, and even when my sons when they're in school, listen, we're taking a sickcation day. I'll take my sons to the beach, right? And it could be in the middle of the school year, as long as they don't have no tests or nothing like that. Listen, we spent the day at the beach because kids need time to unwind and all that kind of stuff, just like adults do. And so sometimes you've got to listen, be willing to take a day and just forget about everything for a day, right? And because listen, we have pressures that we deal with. I can't tell you. I have a few friends of mine who are dealing with issues with their parents, right? Because, if we're in our mid 40s, 50s, you got to think that, you know, our parents are in their like 70s, in some cases 80s, and they're getting older. And so they're going to have some physical issues sometimes, and things happen. And so, we sometimes have to kind of take on that burden, right? And so that can be stressful. And so, you know what? You've got to be able to take a day, go to the beach and unwind, go catch a movie, go have a nice dinner somewhere, right? If you're seeing someone, you know, go take a long drive, go. I'm a big advocate for retail therapy too. Every now and then, listen, of course, we want to save money and things like that. But sometimes you got to go in and get some retail therapy. I know for me, when I need some retail therapy, the first thing I do is I go to the polo store, and I'll buy like a polo shirt or a sweatsuit or something like that, just to have something new. I call it retail therapy. It's spending money for no reason. I don't need another sweatsuit, but I'll buy one just because, you know what? I wanted to get out. I wanted to, get away from the house and stuff like that. So I'll go and do some retail therapy. And I mean, I know women, they're not going to dispute that in any way, shape, or form. I know so many women who like retail therapy, right? Like they enjoy going, listen, and buying themselves, a bag or things like that. Listen, I'm a big advocate. If your bills are paid and you got the wherewithal, by all means, do so. Right. Um, Another term, that always boggles, it makes me laugh when the person says, "Hold on." So TikTok wants to make certain that I'm still here. Yes, I'm still. Oh, TikTok wants to make. Hold on. Right. They want to make certain that I'm still here. Yes. Yes, TikTok, I'm still here. We're going to be on for another couple of minutes. So, once again, I want to thank everyone who joined me tonight on the Good, the Bad, and the Odd online dating podcast. You can find, if you miss some of the show, you can catch it on YouTube at Craig Palmer on YouTube. And if you haven't picked up your book, you definitely want to pick up your book, The Good, the Bad, and the Odd. Tonight we talked a little bit about different terms, right? The last term I didn't, I don't think I mentioned it, but when people say no cap, right? And I used to wonder, what the hell is no cap, right? And it means total truth, no lie, right? I didn't know what no cap mean. I'm sorry, I really didn't. Now I do, right? So, we need to be able to decipher what people are saying sometimes. So, for those of you looking on YouTube, please share with your family and friends. Subscribe, like, subscribe, right? For those of you checking out on TikTok, please tune in every Tuesday at 9 p.m. My co host couldn't be with us tonight, but I'm sure she'll be back with us next week. So, I want to thank everyone for joining us. It has been a pleasure. Have a good night, and we will talk again. Good night. So I'm signing off.